Well, that Marvel Tokon news has definitely been taken off. Most of what I've seen has been quite positive, like pretty much what I've seen, and granted I'm just one set of eyes in this freaking massive world, but people are hyped from what I'm saying. Like I've seen people FGC and even those that are just Marvel fans, people that'll play fighting games casually. This game has a lot of hype behind it, and personally, I think it's warranted. The only other stuff that I've seen, for the most part, are memes and jokes, most of which are talking about how Marvel basically broke up with Capcom and now they're with Arc System Works now, as far as like, bringing a new Marvel fighting game back into the market. And that is actually a pretty interesting topic, honestly, because I've seen some people talk about the fact that maybe seeing how bad MVCI was, that's what caused the breakup. But instead, I actually want to cover something else that caught my eye, and it's actually going to take us into a matter of talking about Marvel and SNK. And you're probably thinking, Marvel versus SNK? What are you talking about? That crossover's not real, even though it might be pretty cool if that did happen. Why am I talking about it? Because in the midst of all the jokes and the memes and of course the praise and all the hype for Marvel Tokon, there is one post that was an outlier to all of that, and it's this one. This was a post that came courtesy of one of my homies, GKai, which I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, check him out. He talks about a variety of games and talks about a variety of different topics that are game related. Do check him out, he's a great friend of mine. And for those of you that have been following me pretty much since the beginning, he's also a musician, and one of my earliest videos that blew up, specifically this one, the background music actually came courtesy of him. So once again, shout outs to GKai. This is a post of his that I came across on Blue Sky, and it says, KOF players watching y'all get hyped for a 4v4 fighting game because it's Marvel. And it's followed by this gif of Idris Elba just sneering at somebody, just pretty much looking dismissive and just being like, pfft, get out of here. Now, GKai, if you're watching this, you're more than welcome to drop in the comment section and correct me on anything. I don't want to misquote you on anything or misrepresent your feelings about Marvel Tokon or anything like that, but me personally, I'm pretty sure this is mostly a rib. It's a joke. And sure, of course, with jokes, they're supposed to be funny. It's meant to make you laugh. But we all know in some form or another, there are those jokes that will sometimes provoke a little bit of thought. And this particular post actually reminded me of a discussion that's been going on, I think, for quite a bit of time. I'm not going to pretend to know the origins of this particular discussion, but I do remember at one point when it was prominent. And that was when King of Fighters was going to make its comeback with King of Fighters 15. Now, of course, just as we're doing with Marvel Tokon, whenever there's a new fighting game out there, whether it be something fresh new installment, there's a lot of discussion. In the case of King of Fighters 15 coming back, there was discussion about rollback netcode more so, but also I remember, because I'm pretty sure Ignite Rizzy made a video about this as well, shout outs to him as well, this whole discussion about, is King of Fighters a hard game to play? Diving a little bit deeper into that particular question, there was apparently one very common reason why a lot of people felt like King of Fighters was a hard game and the reason why they felt they couldn't pick it up, and that was the whole matter of having to learn 3 characters. Now, for those that are quite hardcore and longtime fighting game fans, that reasoning sounds pretty silly. Obviously, King of Fighters is not the only fighting game ever to have 3v3 or require you to learn 3 characters. As a matter of fact, one of the most common fighting games brought up to counterpunch this particular talking point brings us right back to Marvel. Marvel 2, Marvel 3. Both games quite beloved in their own way, even though many people learned recently that MVC2 is not all that beloved in the beginning of its run, but still, it grew to become one of the most beloved games ever. It's commonly in the conversation about the best fighting games of all time, and even pops up when talking about the best video games of all time. Marvel 3 is somewhere below that particular game, but also another widely loved game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that nobody's ever said this in regards to the Marvel games, but I can confidently say that the whole sentiment of it's too much to learn 3 characters was brought up all that much in regards to Marvel like it's been with King of Fighters. Hence, you have some King of Fighters fans that are kind of looking at these people sideways. Some people even brought up Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was another 3v3 fighting game that, at least from what I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, was warmly embraced by people who were into the MVC games. I've heard people say stuff like, oh, you say it's too much to learn 3 characters for King of Fighters, but you love Dragon Ball FighterZ though. And then, of course, gotta bring back this post from GKai. We got ourselves another Marvel game, and this time it's 4v4. So yeah, again, I'm pretty sure this is just mostly a joke, but I could also see some King of Fighters fans looking at the whole 3 character thing as just a massive cop-out. Now, here's where I'm gonna put more of my thoughts and feelings about the matter here, because I do have quite a lot to say in regards to both sides of the argument, and there's a lot of stuff we have to consider when talking about this particular thing. First off, I'm gonna reiterate something that I've said in regards to the King of Fighters fandom when it came to this whole topic of, is King of Fighters a hard game? Once again, most of us that have been longtime King of Fighters fans, we have been playing this game since the 90s. 94. Some people might have came in a little bit later. I'm a lifelong KOF fan. Even though SNK has pulled some stuff that I don't personally like, still love what they do, still love their fighting games more than most others, and that includes King of Fighters. With that being said, there are a lot of KOF 4 lifers that are just not nuanced enough when it comes to bringing in people, or at least attempting to bring people into the game. Because again, you just saying that the game is not hard and then you also express that you are a lifelong KOF fan, that doesn't mean anything. Of course, King of Fighters is not gonna be a hard game to you. You've been playing it since the 90s. And I know how sensationalist that the FGC can be, but I wanna point out this is not everybody. Some people actually, I think, have done a solid job of trying to get people into KOF. But that's one common mistake that I keep seeing. Oh, it's not a hard game, and I've been playing since 94. Of course it's not gonna be hard to you. Of course it's not. That's not gonna really mean all that much to somebody who is super casual or super new. With that being said, I can actually agree to a point with KOF fans that feel like the whole I gotta learn 3 characters thing is a cop-out. I can agree to some degree. Reason I say that is this. One of the games I mentioned, and of course one of the games that other people mentioned to counter that whole point, was Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now with that particular game, I don't think picking up 3 characters is all that hard. That game also did the whole matter of making it easy and simple enough for the beginners and the casuals to pick up, while still having a significant degree of technical and competitive aspects that was pleasing to hardcore and competitive fighting game players. That was one of the reasons why that game did so well. There's another obvious reason, but I'm gonna get to that a little bit later. Shifting over to Marvel, we're talking specifically about Marvel 2 and Marvel 3. Your mileage may vary, and I mean, hey, that's cool, but I would definitely argue that picking up and just getting a decent grip on a character in that game is a little bit more difficult than it is in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Even with how they made UMVC 3 a little bit more accessible compared to 2 with stuff like the comeback mechanics and some mildly simpler controls, I still feel like Dragon Ball FighterZ was still the simpler game in terms of like getting a decent grip on a character. Like, I'm not even saying mastering, just getting a good feel for the character. I mean, granted, of course, Dragon Ball FighterZ had motion inputs and everything, but it almost kind of seemed in a way basic combos in FighterZ were kind of similar, you know? You can make that argument for Marvel 3, but of course, as you know, the game went on, there was different pieces of tech that people were discovering and utilizing. And I mean, hey, both games had the touch of death element, which for me personally, it was easier doing TODs in Dragon Ball FighterZ than it was in Marvel. You know what I'm saying? And like with Marvel 2, I would argue, especially with the whole matter of if, you know, learning the characters with King of Fighters is like really just a big priority to you, you had to learn like some really crazy stuff in Marvel 2. Like I would imagine, like if you even wanted to be somewhat like proficient in that game, in most cases, you'd have to at least know about a TOD. You had the infinites in there. And I mean, Marvel 3 had those too, albeit most of those usually came off of stuff like X Factor Level 3, and of course the TAC glitches and stuff like that. Like, you see, like, all these different things that I'm naming in Marvel 3, it's like, there is a lot more going on there in terms of learning a character. Fighters, not saying like, it didn't have like its little bit of tech too, but just saying, on the surface level, on the matter of just getting a decent grip of the character, Fighters is pretty easy. So, I mean, that right there, Marvel, I think it would take a lot more effort. And then lo and behold, we got another Marvel game, and now it's 4 characters. 4. But people are still going nuts over it. People are still celebrating, oh, Marvel Tokon, Marvel Tokon. This is where I say it's like, I can see where KOF players look at that whole 3 characters complaint with KOF and they think that that's bullshit. They think it's like a cop-out. Why are you like so tied up about learning 3 characters in this game, whereas like you playing all these other games and getting hyped for this other game, all of which are going to make you learn 3 characters or more? This is going to bring me back to a point that I said I was going to get to later. And somebody on GKai's original post actually made the same point. I had already thought about it when I had seen the post. I do think it is because of the IPs themselves. Marvel is a ginormous IP. I do not care if you are the biggest Marvel hater on the planet. You can hate it as much as you want. That does not delete the fact that there are millions and millions of Marvel fans out there. Same can be said for Dragon Ball FighterZ. Dragon Ball is another ginormous, widely beloved IP. King of Fighters, as much as a lot of hardcore King of Fighters fans may not want to admit it, but overall, not really like a largely beloved franchise. It's pretty niche now. Like, the heyday for KOF was the 90s, and it needs to be commended that King of Fighters is still continuing to go on even to this day with the many things that SNK has been going through. But still, if we're being honest with ourselves, and I do not care if you love King of Fighters and SNK characters and IPs more than these other 2, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you're being honest with yourself, SNK, KOF, it's not on the same level as Dragon Ball and Marvel Comics. It just isn't. A lot of people, which is typical for talking about fighting games on YouTube or whatever, or talking about the mess online, people have selective hearing. Because I remember when Mai and Terry were announced for the Season 2 of Street Fighter 6, this was my complete statement and my feelings about that. I like Terry and I like Mai. I like the fact that something like that actually happened. Third-party guest characters coming into Street Fighter, and not to mention a franchise that Capcom has had ties to for quite some time now, and they just reset their relationship recently. I love it. At the same time, given that this was yet another guest appearance for both of these characters, it's Terry's 4th in a major fighting game, it was Mai's 3rd, I would really wish that they could possibly get some other SNK characters to get some guest character shine. At the same time, I get why those 2 were picked. Those 2 are arguably the number 1 and number 2 characters from SNK, far as like stars, as I call them. And when I say stars, I mean like people within the SNK fandom and outside the SNK fandom immediately know who those 2 are. I'm not talking about just SNK favorites like, ooh, what about Shermie? What about... No. Shermie really didn't get that much shine until like the trailer came out for KOF 15 and they heard KOF fans making all this noise, and you had people on the outside wondering, oh, what they got going on over there? Why they making all this? Oh, that's why. Shermie is not an icon. Shermie is not a star yet. I don't know what SNK is gonna do. I think they should ride that momentum from that trailer, but I digress. This is all to say, again, SNK, King of Fighters, it's not on the same level as Marvel. Marvel has many more recognizable characters, same with Dragon Ball, and while it might sting a bit, it might seem hypocritical in the eyes of KOF fans, but this just goes to show that IP recognition, IP favoritism will win over what they might consider to be substance. And that's not to say like I think there's no substance to Fighters and Marvel 2 and Marvel 3. I like all those games. I think all of them are of good quality and substance. But with that being said, I think this is an example of how an IP can be so beloved, people will overlook stuff like that. Could you call this FGC hypocrisy? Some people will say something like, oh, this is just the world we live in, but I do think, to a degree, there's an argument for saying this is hypocritical. Like, going back to what I had said earlier about Dragon Ball FighterZ combos pretty much kind of being very similar, you can make that same argument when it comes to King of Fighters 15. In most cases, you're just gonna be confirming with a normal and going into a command normal, max mode, and then just doing whatever you can after that. Or just doing like basic B&Bs like you would do in many other fighting games. But again, I have been playing King of Fighters since '94. You know, just putting that out there, it's not gonna mean that much to a casual or somebody who's trying to get into the game. On a little bit of a side note, it's kind of funny to me how SNK fighting games have been getting this rep for being like very difficult compared to others. Like especially with the release of Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. Now with that game, again, I can understand it because there's a lot going on. It's quite mechanically dense. Like I would hope that despite the fact that you have these mechanics and all this stuff going on, that seeing with this game, it's not a 3v3, so perhaps that load could be taken off the shoulders of people and hopefully more folks would get into City of the Wolves, but I think I miscalculated that. But yeah, it just seems like that is just the power and the privilege of being a very strong, very prominent, and widely beloved IP. People will overlook stuff like that. With that being said, I do want to point out and get this bit of information in here before I forget, but upon reading into more details about Marvel Tokon, which I got off of Event Hubs, which of course they got I think from the PlayStation blog, there are going to be simple modern controls in this game as well, so I could see this game having that Dragon Ball FighterZ feel, and I mean that's a good thing, but at the same time I don't want to speak too much on it because yeah, we get exactly what that particular bit of information is hinting at. As I was reminded when I tried out the Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact demo, it's better to get like a hands-on experience with these games, even though of course for me, all we can go off of is just the trailer. And I'm saying all that to say, I don't know to what degree the simple modern controls might come in, how prominent will they be to where the gameplay might feel super simple. Like, I understand of course they mentioned that it's still gonna be something that competitive players will be interested in, but I just gotta see how it's set up. I don't wanna speak on that. But that's really the long and short of it with this particular topic. Again, no hate at all for Jikai. I just feel like this was one of those joking posts that actually kind of brought about some thought-provoking, which is definitely a good way to describe most of the topics that Jikai brings up. He's very thought-provoking. And I wish we had more content creators that are more prominent actually provoking thought instead of trying to provoke emotions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm still hyped for Marvel Tokon. And at the end of the day, I think there is a degree of truth with King of Fighters fans that may feel like the whole matter of whether it's this game, whether it's Fighters, whether it's Marvel 2 or 3 or any other ones you can think of. I do believe there might be some degree of hypocrisy there with lobbing the whole, oh my god, I gotta learn 3 characters. Like, you'll lob it at King of Fighters, but then you won't do it for others. But at the same time, again, as we went over, more so the case with Dragon Ball FighterZ, picking up 3 characters is not that hard. It really isn't. And even though it's not a prominent game right now, but hey, it's also a 3v3 tag fighter. That's also pretty simple, but also the same thing with Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact. Very simple controls and probably not that hard to pick up a character in that game as well. Like even when you put all these games side by side, like I wouldn't say King of Fighters 15 was like the hardest game as far as like, you know, picking up and getting a good grip on a character. I would still put MVC 2 at the top far as like probably requiring more time and more work and more practice as opposed to King of Fighters 15, but that is just me. Again, your mileage may vary. But I'm curious as to seeing how you all feel about this. Do you think there's hypocrisy there when it comes to people throwing complaints about learning 3 characters in King of Fighters is too hard, whereas they'll play all these other games? Do you think that it's just the power of the IP and that people love it so much they'll overlook that stuff? Are there any other points you'd like to make that I didn't necessarily bring up that you think would make a significant argument? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, I am the Chris Lotus signing off. You all take care of yourselves, be safe out there, be cool to each other, and stay cool by staying hydrated out there in the heat. See ya.